Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. In this chapter 2 of the Nahmad and Haywood book, in 2.4 and 2.5, they deal with a couple of things, with phrases and sentences in bits and pieces. Right, so let's first of all start with phrases in Arabic. So we've dealt with nouns, and we know that if they don't have al and they have a nunation, a doubling at the end, we can translate it as a something. So this is the word bait, which means a house, and because it doesn't have al, we say a house. But what if we wanted to describe the house? We can put a describing word, which is also a noun, after the word we want to describe. So, and it must match it in its definiteness. So if it's indefinite, the noun that we put after it should also be indefinite, and I've summarized that with this D. So D minus is indefinite, and D plus means it is definite. So baytun saghirun, a house literally, and a small. So we would translate we would translate this as a small house. Suppose we had the house, al baytu, then we would have an adjective. Again, it's put after the word we're describing, but it must match it in its definiteness. It should also be definite with an al. Al-baytu as-saghiru. The house, the small. The small house. Now, so that's very briefly put, and you can do this with other words and other examples. Now, what happens if we have more than one describing word for a noun? For example, baytun saghirun. We have one adjective, small, describing the word house, a small house. If we wanted two adjectives, so we're going to add an extra word called jamilun, we would say baytun saghirun jamilun, a small, beautiful house. If we had three adjectives, we would write baytun saghirun jamilun jadidun, a small, beautiful, new house. And the point they make in Nahmad and Haywood is when you have multiple adjectives, you don't put an and in between them. So we don't say baytun saghirun wa jamilun wa jadidun, wa being the Arabic word for and. The same applies if the words are definite. Al-baytu as-saghiru. Note there's a dot missing there. The small house. Al-baytu as-saghiru al-jamilu. The beautiful small house. Al-baytu as-saghiru al-jamilu al-jadidu. The small, beautiful, new house. So again, there's no wa in between this. So no need for an and or a wa, if it is a phrase. But what happens if it's a sentence? So Nahmad and Haywood jump into the concept of sentences and don't really explain the difference between a sentence and a phrase. So I've just done that bit here. What is the difference between a phrase and a sentence? A phrase in Arabic is known as shibhu jumla, a bit, something that resembles a sentence, whereas a sentence is a jumla, a proper sentence. And essentially you can summarize it with one word, dots. When you say the word al-baytu as-saghiru, the small house, if we put three dots, we would mean that the sentence is incomplete. If somebody's listening to you, they would say, the small house, yes, carry on and complete the sentence. They're expecting you to finish. But if you said al-baytu saghirun, that's the whole sentence, so we put a single full stop. Here you're saying the house is small. Now there's no word is in Arabic, so why did I put an is? I'll explain that further down here. Al-baytu saghirun. Here we have a noun, and we have a second word which is also a noun. The first noun is definite, i.e. ma'arifa, D+. How do we know? Because we've got alif, lam, and it doesn't have nunation. The second word is indefinite. How do we know? It doesn't have alif, lam, and it does have nunation. So we have gone from a word which is definite to a word which is indefinite. It's as if we've crossed from one country, called definite, to another country called indefinite. And when we cross from one country to another country, we pass through no man's land. And no man's land is where the word is resides in Arabic. And that's why it's not written. So, the house, definite, a small, indefinite. So we translate it as the house is small. Okay, so how do we know where the is? It's where we pass from the definite to the indefinite. So this is a simple way of trying to understand this. So, al-baytu saghirun. The house is small. But what happens if we want to add an extra adjective? We want to say the house is new and small. Here we need to add a wa. Al-baytu saghirun wa jadidun. So, another example. So when we compare this to the top sentence we had here, baytun saghirun jamilun, or baytun saghirun jamilun jadidun, we never had the wa. But the moment the extra adjectives form part of the khabar, the bit about the information about the first noun is called the khabar, then we need to add a wa. So this is what they're saying here in Ahmad and Haywood. Al-baytu saghirun wa jadidun. If we wanted to say the white house is a important old house, here the white house is al-baytu al-abyadu. This is an important, the white, al-baytu, the house, al-baytu, the house, al-abyadu, the white. So these two words are both definite. So that's an adjective. Al-abyad is an adjective of al-bayt, and because we haven't crossed a border, we didn't go from definite to indefinite, we've gone definite, definite, we know this is a phrase. The house, the white house. And then we move on to qadimun wa muhimmun. Qadim and old, and muhim, important. So here these two words together form a phrase, an old and important. And now we have an and, because this whole phrase is almost acting like a single word describing this whole phrase. So we could translate that as the white house. The place where we go from the definite to indefinite is where we put the is. The white house is al-baytul abyadu qadimun wa muhimmun, is old and important. So to summarize, we will deal with this I think a bit later on in Ahmad and Haywood, is if you have a definite noun and it's qualified by an adjective, then obviously the adjective has to be a definite as well. But if the khabar, the predicate in English, is multiple, it has more than one word, then we need to add a wa in between. So that's all they're really saying in this bit of the thing. But they've combined a couple of new concepts. One is the concept of a sentence, and the type of sentence is a nominal or a noun sentence, i.e. it begins with a noun, and that's called Jumlat al-Ismiyya. But don't worry about these terms, we will come back to them again. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.